All right, welcome in, folks, to another great episode of I've Got a Theory. I'm your host, Henish. I've got my guest on today, Sidney Prado. Sidney, thanks for joining me.
Hey, man, thanks for inviting me.
And you're in Dallas. We're keeping this real everywhere. Dallas is basically another country within the United States.
Yeah,
Or
Texas
is.
Yeah, Texas is kind of doing its own thing. I'm not even sure what that is, so I'll let you know when I know.
Yeah, I know I like going to Texas, and I like most Texans. So thank you for being you and where you're from.
Thank you.
Well, so I got to take a minute to thank Manscaped for taking care of men's parts and their grooming regimens. I've got all kinds of great stuff in there, revivers and toners and spritzers, and I don't even have that many products in my bar. And so it's pretty good if you're a dude that's looking to take care of his junk. This is the company to go to because they specialize in men's junk. I don't know if that's their slogan as much as if you go to their website and use my code I've got a theory, you get free shipping and 20% off, and you get some of this stuff. And incredibly, a lot of my prior guests have been like, "Oh, we already have all that stuff. We got the trimmer. We've got versions 2 and 3, even the one without the light in it." I'm glad people are happy with it. They swear that it works as good as that they promise, and so everyone's appreciative of Manscaped.
I hear your balls will thank you.
That's what it says. That's what they say. And I guess I'm not listening close enough to my balls because I haven't heard them say anything.
Man, there's a theory. Like if they do end up talking, I don't think it'd be thank you. That's for that's for dang sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. So, Sidney, welcome onto the show. You've listened to a couple episodes, and you mentioned you've got a harebrained theory that you don't like to talk about because you don't want your friends to think you're crazy.
Yeah, I mentioned
so now this is the platform for that. Let's hear your crazy theory and why it's relevant.
So my theory is that human beings are not just third dimensional beings. We are more than that. Spiritually, we connect on different levels. A lot of this is unexplained, and my explanation, which is just a theory, and I have no science behind it, but just bear with me. We are fifth dimensional beings, and by that I mean the fifth dimension has the dominion over time, which is the fourth dimension, which has the dominion over us in our real lives. We can view time differently as humans in movies, in memories. We alter them ourselves based on just time and forgetfulness, and they become real. And then the people who are also involved in those memories also believe those misconceptions. And then the last and the most important in my mind is dreams. When someone dreams, we have multiple dreams per night. They last about 30 seconds to a minute. And in those dreams, we live full lives. And it's nuts, man. I also think that maybe if we can tap into the VR a little bit and we can tap into that part of our brain, we can play whole games in VR in a matter of 5 minutes of real life time.
So Sidney, you just threw a lot at us, and there's a lot to unpack there. So let's start off with this. If we're 5D creatures, is that relative to other creatures on this planet that are still 3D creatures that don't have understanding and dominion over time?
I would think so.
Mainly, like for your example, like your dog,
right? Which I don't know, because dogs do dream. You see all those YouTube videos of dogs running in their sleep. So
if you ever heard of like Bunny the dog, what about Bunny? You can find him on Instagram. The dog understands concepts of before and later.
That's nuts.
Yeah, because the owner's taught to talk on pads that it taps with its paws.
Oh, yes.
And it'll be like, go to park now. And then the mom will be like, how about later? The dog will like look out the window and come back and be like, park now.
Like having a real child.
It's real demanding. So, so I guess that's one question is, if we're 3D, but because of our understanding and control over time, that we're 5D in essence.
I would say more like our souls, which are even if it's immeasurable. Like, we can't measure a soul at this point in society,
So this is a whole nother theory though, because now this is predicated on the theory that you believe in souls.
Right. I believe that
that's not a universal understanding, right? There's got to be people that don't believe in souls either. Okay, so this kind of it's a theory within a theory. So our dimensionality has to do with our understanding of our souls as well.
Right. And the only reason I believe in souls, other than the fact that I am also a believer, I try to be subjective when I come up with a theory, but I believe in souls because of how human, how the connections we have with people aren't aren't very quantifiable. We can't measure why I'm thinking about somebody right now that I miss, or why did I just randomly think about that person? Why did that just pop into my head? These connections we make
Or
that
it's
we
even a
can't
little
see.
creepier when you're thinking about them, and then the next second they call you, and then like, I was
Yeah,
just thinking about you, and you just
it's
called me from the other side of the planet.
dude, that's it. That you're nailing it on the head for
I was
sure.
with a friend on Saturday. I was telling his girlfriend that story that me and a buddy were hanging out a month ago, and we were talking about something. I said, Luke, if Luke was here, he would do this X Y Z. And then that moment, he had called us. And me and my
Wow.
friend were like, what the hell? How did he hear? How did he know that we were talking about him? And he calls right now. It's not like he calls often, it's like a guy that calls once a month or every couple of months. So yeah, I mean, there is some kind of vibrational energy transference where someone's get pinged, right? They'll talk about maybe your ears are ringing because someone's talking about you.
Yeah, it goes to those old wives' tales of like, oh, your neck's burning, someone's saying something about you, or yeah, your ears are turning red, your ears are ringing. Um, Again, like I hope that we get to a point in time that we can quantify these things, and then I can just be like, oh, I was insane when I when I thought of this, you know.
No, all theories start off as crazy until they're proven right, right? I mean, it's
Right,
like science fiction is only science fiction until it becomes actual science.
right.
And,
That's
and so, the dimensionality concept is interesting because one of my former guests had me read a Dan Brown book, a series of the Da Vinci Code called Origins, and in it, and I'll just give a spoiler. So if you're going to read this book, please don't listen to this podcast from this moment on. But it's a really good book. But in it, basically, the main character builds supercomputers, which you can appreciate since you're kind of in the biz. Builds a supercomputer, one that's based on optical computing, right? And then the other one that's based on the most advanced regular circuitry computing that we have now. And so he basically creates a right and a left node of a brain of a supercomputer to kind of combat off of each other. So one kind of the artsy side, the other is the more analytical side, and run simulations over
wow.
millions of years, right? And so really mastering the fifth D that you're talking about, and run simulations from the beginning of time, from when the planet was forming due to accretion to when life formed out of the primordial soup, and to show that those original experiments that happened back in the 60s, where the scientists said, hey, if we have the right mix of amino acids and heat and lightning strikes and goop, give it enough time, the basic building blocks of life form, and from there single cells and then multi-cells and goes on. And so in the book, in his simulations, he runs the simulations a bunch of times and proves that every time this does happen based on the factors that we understand about the origins of our planet.
That's so cool. I do know that there's a big stigma with believers and science and like the Big Bang and stuff, but I'm about it. Like the science is there. I always say like, how do we know that the Big Bang isn't the how, and then God is just the why? And a lot of Christians will instantly like put me off because they're like, you're crazy. The world's only 10,000 years old, and I'm like, that's crazier. You don't even know.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole nother rabbit hole. In fact, next week I'll be interviewing on my show a flat earther, and he makes his job talking about and proving that flat Earth is a fact, and that the round globe is a theory, and it's not as provable as a flat Earth. And you're right, and a lot of it comes down to whether the person's religious or not, and how literally they want to take the Bible, whether they believe it was written by God or not, was translated by humans.
Exactly, 100%, man.
And so your theory that could a God have created the Big Bang? Yeah, probably, but it's probably not the same God that we would understand from books that we've read
Right.
nowadays, or have been shared to us by our families, or even when you go to a religious class where you're searching your soul for your spirituality. There's probably no understanding of what a God like that would want from us, right?
Yeah.
We're so that's like worrying about a skin disorder on an ant. Like we don't even care about the ant, let alone their skin disorders.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. My whole like thing about people who make it their job to try to disprove a deity of sorts is, man, the problem is we can't. It's immeasurable. It's we physically cannot measure something that's outside of the realm that we are actually in. So let's just like say I don't know,
Yeah,
and
let's
move
agree.
on to
Let's
the.
agree to not know this because we've all just been fed information, and unless it's repeatable and provable, then it's just faith, and
Yeah,
faith means that you just believe it, and there's no evidence.
that's exactly it. And I'm all about that. Go if you want to believe like that, go for it. And the same with the other. If you don't want to believe because you don't want to believe that, then that's totally cool. But I don't like saying I know. I don't like saying I know that this is real. I like saying this is what I believe because of the things that have happened to me, but I don't have physical, measurable, quantifiable evidence to give you.
Well, let's dive back into the mastery of time, right? The dominion and mastery of time, because this is a concept that doesn't get enough attention, right? For example, and I'll let you kind of unravel this one on your own time. Did you know that we barely understand how gravity works?
Barely. Yeah.
And did you know that the best theory for how gravity works is due to time?
100%.
Gravity has force relative to mass based on time gradients.
Yeah, that's how we measure gravity, right? The 9.8 meters squared.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, yeah, you're measuring the force of gravity. That's gravity on Earth, right? That
yeah,
9.8
right.
is the Earth
Here.
number.
And we use time as the measurement to, you can go this fast in this amount of time.
Yeah. So it's something like that, and they're basically saying that, hey, if you have atomic clocks on the surface of the planet and X number of miles up, there's a delta in what 1 second is further away from the surface of the planet,
That's so cool.
and that delta is the time gradient, and that's what they believe causes gravity.
Whoa.
It's still very basic theory at this point. It's just mostly speculation, but they can prove that time is different with different gravitational pulls.
Oh yeah, like on Mars, the what is it? The days are 66 hours long or something like that.
Yeah, I
And
can't remember, but yeah, I mean, also it's a different size, and that's why your gravity is different,
yeah.
right? So it just proves that that 9.8 meters is probably less. Maybe it's 5 meters per second there, or something like that. So that fifth D is where you're mentioning the dream state, and you're right. Maybe there's times, and maybe you've done it in your own life with sports or video games or other activities. I know there's times where I'm like, I feel like I'm in the zone. I feel like I can see things to the pixel, or like I have a ping pong table outside my office. There's been times where I feel like I'm in the zone. I'm like, I can't miss. You can't get a
Yeah.
ball past me, and I feel like time has slowed down. But that's what a lot of athletes will say they experience when they're in the zone, right?
Yeah.
When you're a batter trying to hit a 100-mile-per-hour fastball, man, I'm a bad baseball player because I know I've been into batting cages where it's pitching at 70 and I can't even hit it.
It,
But those guys, like, one, they've practiced. Two, they can like train their brain and their optics to like slow down to see the stitch of the ball to know where they're going to hit it, from that distance. And that's kind of like an example of mastery of time. What do you think?
I am all about it, man. Uh when per second, when our brains are active, we do about 150 to 200 processes per second, which is insane to think. Like if you trying to think about that, I feel like I'm getting slower. And now I'm at 10 processes per
Yeah,
second, just trying
it's
to.
time to download one of those apps where they make you do math quizzes every few minutes.
Yeah, but the whole idea that we have so many thoughts at one time, when in reality we're only be able to do one of those things. The
Yeah,
only
everyone tells you
example,
multitasking is bad, right? And so
right?
stay focused on one thing.
The only experience I've had of like the ball slowing down is when I was little. We were playing t-ball, and somebody hit it, and it looked like the ball was like standing still or just going super slow. And I reached out with my bare hand to grab it, and then everything sped up, and it smacked my hand so hard, and I was a little tyke, so I screamed and cried, and I was like, "It was going so slow. I don't know why," And no, that I never even thought of it like that. You just like opened my whole
No,
way of
I
thinking
know it
about it.
happens because I'm a mediocre video game player too, but I've played with my brother who's a phenomenal video game player, and we'll be playing like Halo or Destiny, and he'll go on like a 36 kill death streak or something like that. And I'm like, dude, that was nuts. How did you just do that and not get hit once? And he was like, well, I kind of predict where people are going. I'll drop frags off the corners. I know that they're going to be there, and then I'll just pop them right there. And he's like, I'm aiming to where they're going, and he'll like predict those vectors with accuracy, right? And that's what a good gamer does. But it's also about time because everyone's moving fast, and those guys are trying not to get shot. And he's saying, "Hey, I'm going to shoot you in the eyeball." That's what's going to happen. And it comes from practice, but I think you can kind of like tune in so much and tune out everything else so much that you can slow down that rate of time on that activity that you're focused on or that you're laser focused on, right? It's kind of like speed reading. Have you ever tested how fast you can read or how fast you possibly could read?
Yeah, a few times. I'm not very good at it. I'm one of those people that if I read something and then if it didn't make sense the first time, I end up having to go back and reread it.
Yeah.
So the only time I've done speed reading is I'll read it and I'm like, none of the information was absorbed. I have no idea what I just read, and I always have to go back. So
no, it's one of those things I tried to do when I was in high school and I didn't practice enough. And I measured myself at like 600 to 800 words a minute, which is good enough, for casual reading. These guys that are pros can do like 3,000 to 5,000 words per minute.
Wow.
And the difference is when you and I, regular people, read, we see a word, say it aloud in our mind, and that's how we process it. And that saying it aloud in our mind is the delta between regular people and speed readers. Speed readers don't say it in their mind. They go from seeing the word to just understanding it.
Right.
And not having to say it. They just see it and it instantly transfers into what however that information is conveyed into their brain without having to read it in their head.
Yeah, they cut out the middleman.
Yeah, right. And that can get you 5 times faster.
Gosh, that's so cool.
Right. Think of that kind of mastery of time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like, well, now you can crush books that much faster, but just any information, obviously we can all consume information faster on words than maybe visually, right? Like reading a book is a lot more beneficial than seeing the movie version of it.
Right.
Yeah. It's hard to contest that. But yeah, that mastery of time, that's the thing. That's the thing with humans that like, I think we understand it. And I think that we're more victims of time than mastery of it.
Right. We are.
Because that's our biggest limitation, right? We want to have all these grand aspirations. And this is another one of those conversations we just talked about this past weekend. But Buddy's like, I wish that parents would just teach their kids everything they knew while they were kids. So then when they were adults, they could acquire new skills that their parents didn't teach them, right? So you can condense that 40 or 50 years of your parents' life into, the first 10 to 18 of a kid's and get that jump start on your knowledge acquisition, because that's the time delta, right? You should want to learn your entire life.
100%. You're hitting the nail on the head, and I'm just so glad to have somebody riff off this with, because the only other people I've told this to are like, cool, whatever you say, So
that's the end of the conversation, I guess.
Yeah, my wife, I'll start going into it, and then she's back on Instagram on her phone, So
yeah.
It's nice to have someone riff off and expand it, because now I'm thinking about it even more.
No, I mean, that's the point of the show, is to kind of create awareness and think about things that you might not think about. But, like just understanding time, and that our understanding of time is so complicated. And, and I watched those history documentaries and stuff on time, and on like Greenwich Median Time, and how time was super important for our navigational purposes, right? Understanding what the times were, where you're leaving and where you're going to, and how that interacts with the star charts and
Right.
and the calendar and stuff like that were super crucial in shipping and commerce and business. And so we've had mastery of time for a fair amount of time. And if you look back to prehistoric times where we've had sundials and other things where that acknowledge the position of the sun at a certain periods of time throughout the year, that's basically an understanding and mastery of time, right? They're understanding when their seasons are, when their growing seasons are, when their dying seasons are, when they can plant plants, etc., like clockwork,
Right.
literally, right? And so that understanding is what really shifted humans from being animals to becoming humans, with civilizations, with farming, with housing, with division of labor, things like that.
Yeah. You just created the new theory. What if understanding time is what created our souls? There we go.
It's probably one of the pivotal changes, right?
Yeah.
It's probably one of the pivotal changes of understanding that, hey, this every year this happens every 365 days, give or take, down to the quarter, right? 365.27 days or whatever it is exactly.
Yeah.
And so that understanding gives you a lot of control over your environment and then your own livelihood, right? The fact that if you can predict how to grow and plant food and time things like that, just gives you an opportunity to survive longer, right? To get to that next level of understanding. And that's where we're at. We're at this point where we're trying to understand so much about us, our universe, how things work. And if you talk to physicists and theoreticians, I mean, there's a lot more than 5 dimensions out there, right?
Oh,
There's 6, 7, 8,
100%.
9 dimensions. And it's hard for me to wrap my puny brain around that, because it's even hard to understand the 4th and 5th dimensions.
Right.
So
That's why I try not to expand any more than that, because when there's that video of a guy trying to draw a diagram and whatnot about the dimensions, and when he got to the 5th dimension and he tried to draw a tesseract, is when my brain like stopped receiving real information.
yeah, it all just goes foggy, and I'm like, what am I looking at? I'm just seeing clouds of information, and none of it makes sense.
Yeah.
it was like my kid was watching a cartoon I was watching with him, and there was like some animals reading a book, and all they saw were question marks, and it showed up as question marks. And my son, who can read a little bit, is like, what are they reading? They can't, I don't understand those words. And I'm like, they're not words. They're just all question marks, because they don't understand what they're reading either. And that's basically what it's like. When you see something that you don't understand, you're like, you might as well just show me question marks. I don't know what that means.
Yes. You have to download this content to understand it.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
you need a chart or a key to kind of translate, and that's slow goings, right? Versus being able to look at something, speed read it, and just instantly print it into your brain. Because I remember the guy that was teaching the speed reading class that I was taking, he'd be like, anyone give me any book and tell me to read any page. And then he'd just give him a book. He'd look at it. He'd be done with the page, right? And then he'd be like, ask me any detail. Or he'd like read 10 pages. He's like, ask me any detail. And he'd have like perfect recall of like what would happen in whatever those pages were too. It wasn't like he just like read it and like, I think I got the gist of it. He would like know names, places, specifics, just from like reading like that. I'm like, that's
400 years ago, they'd burn him alive.
yeah, this guy's too smart. Let's put him on a cross.
Oh my God. I love living in today's society, man, because this kind of free thought is so accepted, and it's so healthy. And I read stories about how people viewed different ideas back in the day, and just to like have this like breath of fresh air despite the COVID going on, but just to live in this world where we can say these outrageous things, whether they're correct or not, and just be able to like understand each other in this type of a conversation. It's so cool.
It's huge, and I think it's necessary. And one of the purposes of the show is to encourage people to have more odd, weird conversations, even if it's just for the construct of a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Hey, what if? What would that be like? Let's discuss what it looks like living as 5Ds. What if we did have dominion over our time, right? I have another guest coming up that wants to talk about time travel and how he thinks it's possible.
Sounds like one of my best friend in the making.
Yeah, right. I mean, so these concepts, they're super science fiction right now. But if you could have told someone 50 years ago that there's a device that you could look into and have video conversations with someone on the other side of the planet in live time, they'd be like, "You're nuts. That's not a possibility."
Yeah, it's
That's not
insane.
possible.
There's
Yeah.
people alive now that all they had back in the day was radio.
Yeah, for sure. You know,
And-
and on that episode we were talking about with alien communication with my friend Alex, we were talking when in the early '80s, long distance and phones existed, but it took a lot of money. You pay like $1 per minute or more to have a communication. And if you're making $3 an hour or whatever it is, you couldn't really fathom having a $60 per hour conversation with someone, right?
Right.
That doesn't work. So they would write letters, but it would take 30 days from the mail to get delivered from one side of the planet to the other. So that communication loop was 60 days, assuming that person read your letter and immediately wrote you a response letter.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine what my inbox would be if I had the same amount of communication that I'm having now.
Yeah.
And I did it back then. How much paper, how many trees had to die for the
No, it's not possible. I mean, we take advantage of the fact that we can just communicate with anyone with just 3 letters. You can just write SUP to someone and be like, sup. that's a conversation.
Yeah. That's true.
Versus, like now when I get the mail, I'm like, all of this is junk mail versus 40 years ago, people were like, oh, the mailbox, like this is how I'm going to communicate with people.
Yeah. There's another dominion over time we got right there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just the ability to be able to do those kind of things is huge. And so anything that can save time, master time, control time, I mean, that kind of is our ploy, it's our place in the universe. But I don't think it ends with us. I think that the computers, the simulations, the AI have a much better mastery of time than us, right? Because you said it yourself. We're doing 150 calculations per second. Most computers do millions.
Right.
And that's with our limited computing, right? Optical computers supposed to be doing much, much more than that.
That's true.
And then what? Then how do we even compete? We just have to fight to be relevant at that point.
Yeah, that is very true. I'm really scared. I think Stephen Hawking really put the fear of AI into me.
Yeah.
The singularity is upon us. Not really. I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but I think
really?
it'll be.
You don't think it'll happen in our lifetime?
Maybe not. Maybe like close to the end of my lifetime.
I think it could already be happening.
Dude, don't say that.
I think it could already be happening. So, we say that Russia or, someone hacked the 2016 election. Well, if it was AI that did it, wouldn't they just say that some foreign terrorists hacked the election and now are pulling strings and major policymakers that are moving hundreds of millions or billions of dollars around for various sources, right? We got a $1 trillion COVID relief bill. If they're giving $2,000 per person, right? And assume all 300 million people get it. I mean, that's still only a small portion of that $1 trillion, right?
Yeah.
The rest of it goes to corporations or for foreign aid and things like that. And it's like, no one really knows. And then what?
Yeah. Dang.
So is it possible for an AI to divert a couple $1 billion to some slush fund that may some kind of a secret computer program that's just running in the background in the web that we don't know about for years, right? And it puts itself out there as a terrorist did it, or it was a hacker, or it was a leak, right?
Yeah.
And blame it on China, or blame it on Iran, or blame it on someone else, and just point the fingers. But we wouldn't catch on for that for years.
That's true. We'd all be pointing fingers at each other until it was too late.
Until it was too late, and then they got control of the nuclear stockpile, and now what?
And now we have to call Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's the only.
That's it. Yeah, call up Rambo. Get them back together for the what's the movies called that they all get together again for?
The Expendables.
The Expendables. Let's call it the Expendables season 4 or whatever it is. We need to take out computer servers.
Yeah.
But that, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think that AI and computers and robots have the ultimate dominion of time because they can wait. They're not rotting. They're not flesh and cells, and they're not going to get cancer. They're not dying of heart disease.
Wow.
And they can wait, right? I'm less worried about us on our planet. I think that if we do it right, we could just send AI into space and say, go figure it out. Go ahead and mine the asteroid, get your circuits, get your titanium, get your plutonium, whatever you need, because here's where the asteroids are. And just figure out how to do replicating machines, space factories. You guys got space because you can live in space. Humans can't. We're bad at living in space.
Yeah. That's dang. And then they're going to come back and they're going to be sentient and it's going to be this whole thing. And we're at
Ideally,
war.
they just keep ideally they just keep Earth as a really good episode of Attenborough's Planet Earth and say, hey, let's just go there and see what kind of weird mating dances these birds are doing and what kind of dumb shows that the people are doing on The Bachelorette for human entertainment.
Yeah.
And just keeping us as just an entertainment and creativity hub.
It sounds like you're creating the Borg. That's where we're going.
yeah, exactly. So we're just here for fun and to live and not ruin the planet because this is the only thing we can live on. And then let our AI and our robots explore the space because they can take 1 million years to do it.
Yeah.
That's fine because they've got the ultimate dominion of time.
Yeah. That's so good.
That's how I think it plays out. That's from me reading a bunch of sci-fi books and TV and movies and talking to friends and just kind of game planning it out because I've read some AI stuff too, and the Stephen Hawking stuff is good. There's some books that talk about how to prevent AI from taking over because it's the consensus amongst most smart people is that it does happen.
Yeah. I don't see a reality in which it wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, we keep making smarter computers and there's no endeavor that a human undertakes that can't be done better by a computer right now.
Yeah.
And I challenge you to find something that is because the best chess masters have been beat 30 years ago. The best Jeopardy masters were beat 5-10 years ago, right? The best at anything that you can do, right? You see Mark Rober on YouTube making better darts machines than the best darts players.
Yeah.
Right? All these things that a person thinks they can do pretty good. Guess what? A robot and a computer can do it better than you already.
It's true. I really hope that my wife doesn't replace me with a robot. She's super cool.
Yeah, I mean that's why you got to be able to make her laugh because I know I still tell Paris jokes and Siri does. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, man, what's up with that? Pull up.
Yeah, she needs better material in there, but she doesn't know you either. So when I make the corny jokes that I make, you need an audience that understands your sense of humor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, Sidney, thanks for coming on and sharing and talking about all the different D's that we have to deal with. But these dimensions are important, and it's going to get beyond us real quick. So we got to stay relevant for our own sake.
Oh man, that was really fun. I'm super happy I got to get a lot of that off, and you had great input, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining me and sharing that. And because anytime it's a unique concept that we can talk about and the dystopian future and how time involves us, and there's so much to learn, right? Every time I have a conversation like this, I'm always like, let me take some notes down because these are things I need to have look up later, read about, watch a video about, check out PBS Space Time or something to see what I can unpack. Because now I know I need to dig in a little bit more about all these extra dimensions and tesseracts and stuff like that and see if I can explode my brain later tonight.
Yeah. Watch Interstellar. That movie was so fun.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch it. How about that? Because I remember
seeing
it, and it was mostly like the fog of question marks. Like, what's Matthew McConaughey doing? Like, is he in a box?
An engineer? What?
Yeah, I'll have to re-understand it now with a slightly more mature understanding of stuff. So, thank you again to Manscaped for sponsoring us and keeping men's balls happy. Apparently when they'll talk, thank us about that. But please like, comment, subscribe. I've got a theory. You can use that code with Manscaped for discounts and free delivery and stuff like that. Sidney, appreciate your time to block out some time and chat with me on this and expand some minds. Talk about all the D's.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.